Welcome to the White Lotus channel. Thanks for being here. Deck review. ZAAAAMU'S Dark Burn. This went 5-0 in an online league, and when I saw it in the listing, I was like, "What? Dark Burn, Black Burn, whatever you want to call it, 5-0'd in a league." So I pulled it up and take a look at it. It's a little bit different build. Let me just say this out of the gate. The deck's been around for quite some time in some variant or another. This is strictly a meta call. I don't know what he played against, but I would say in this regard that Dark Burn is an excellent meta call. You don't have to overcomplicate things to win. If the majority of your format is Burn, Affinity, Boros Synth, if they're making up 50% of the meta, why would you not run Dark Burn? Right? It's not a hard deck to play. I like his version of it, but really you don't have to high IQ your way in to win. You just play what's going to give you the best chance to win. We'll get into the reasons for that in a minute. Strategically, it's just a burn deck that's black, not red. Almost everything in the deck is sorcery speed, low curve. Its minimum game threshold, the amount of mana that you need to operate efficiently, is 2, which is great. Let's take a look at the pile view. So largely 1 and 2 drops, right? Easy deck to play, but strategically as a burn deck, you're trying to reduce your opponent's life total to 0 as fast as you can. It's not as fast as burn. It's just more inevitable versus burn. Why is that? Why does that make sense? Something like Sovereign's Bite is a type of lightning helix. You're dealing 3 and gaining 3 life. That's a 6-point spread. Vampire's Kiss, dealing 2, gaining 2. Alms of the Vein is another lightning helix-esque. It's not as great because you can't target creatures, but conceptually, that's where we are. What does this do against burn? It's virtual card advantage. I'm not going to go into a long rant on card advantage. I think it's often misunderstood, even by those at the very top. You can look at card advantage or just resource advantage in so many different ways. But let's look at it from a spread advantage. So if you're playing against burn, you're dealing 3 damage to them and gaining 3 life. If we measure cards in terms of 3 points of damage, you've spent 1 card. They now require 2 cards. They need 2 bolts for that spread, right? So when you first come into Magic, gaining life and lifelink seems like the greatest thing in the world, and it's laughable after you play the game for some time, but it's not that illogical when you first start the game. Like, why wouldn't you think, man, if I was at 20 life, if I'm at 30 life and they're at 20 life, then I'm at a superior advantage. You come to learn pretty quickly that's not that big of a deal. Against burn, it's a deal, right? Because there's still, if you look at it traditionally from that, I need 7 cards to do 20 life. You are just not gaining life. You're doing damage and gaining life, creating separation and gaining virtual card advantage, right? So for every alms played, that's 1 card, they need 2 bolts. We're just measuring in bolts. For every Sovereign's Bite played, they need 2 bolts. You play it twice, they need 4 cards, you use 2. It's a type of virtual card advantage. And in this particular format, as red dominated as it is, this is a easy meta call. It's frequently overlooked. We tend to overcomplicate things. At least in my experience and the people that I know, the longer you play the game, the more it tries to get complicated, like it's some type of intellectual stimulation, or I want to play Magic as a form of mental masturbation. That's fine. You do what you want to do. If you just want to win, you make the call for the deck that's just efficient and gets the job done with the least amount of mistakes and the most consistency. You don't have to put yourself in a position every turn to make countless decisions as somehow you didn't earn it if you didn't do it. It's silly. That's an ego driven way to play the game. And if you're about ego, then go do your thing. You do you. That's your business. But if you're just in the game to win, you would want to win the fastest, most efficient, least amount of decisions per turn to get the job done. Why would you want to insert more complication into each turn other than to say, look, if I don't do that, I didn't earn it? I don't know what the hell you're talking about. People that think that way. Think about it in terms of football. If all I have to do is run the football to win the game, and I know that's going to win me the game, there's no point in throwing the football. There's not. You just do what wins the game. And then you go on to other things. The meta eventually changes, and the deck's not optional. You'll hear me talk about it a lot. There's certain decks or certain archetypes that they have a moment to shine, then they go back on the shelf. But you don't forget about them. You just watch the meta. So if the meta slows down a little bit and burn starts taking over, or people play it because they can multi-queue and they can grind longer, great. Dark Burn is a deck that can get you there. Now, strategically, it's a burn deck. Game plan, what do we have? We have, in this version, which is different than other versions that I've seen, 4 Ginger Brute, 4 Cauldron Familiar, 4 Serrated Scorpion, 4 Okaiba, however you want to pronounce it. It's essentially 16 creatures. It's high on that list for a burn deck because it is the archetype that it is. It's a burn deck. Sorcery driven, but that's what it is. Most burn deck archetypes are 8 to 12 creatures. If we count Okaiba, it's 16. Cauldron Familiar, Ginger Brute, all you're doing is just getting in a point or two. It's just a little bit extra reach. But here's the cool thing about Cauldron Familiar in the deck. It's not about the damage it does. It's about the damage it prevents. What are we talking about? So if Monastery Swift Spear's got power 3, power 4, it's not a problem at all. The block with Cauldron Familiar, stop that damage. It goes to the graveyard, bring it back to Lembas, right? And sack it to the Lembas, sack it to the Ginger Brute. It's the damage you're preventing in creating that virtual card advantage through separation. Tyrant's Choice, a great finisher. It's 4 damage. Right, so it's a little bit less on the burn spell part of it. It still gets there. It just gets there in a different way with Cauldron Familiar blocking and sacking. But you're not trying to do 5-6 damage with Cauldron Familiar or 5 or 6 with Ginger Brute. It's not what it's there to do. Ginger Brute can get in for 1, 2, maybe 3. Cauldron, if it's blocking and sacking, maybe it gets in for 2. That's 5. And the burn spells finish the rest. It's not complicated, but I'm just going to emphasize it does create a type of virtual card advantage that's not talked about, a separation advantage. It's not just about drawing all the cards. Advantage means putting yourself in a superior position. Card quality, card efficiency, sometimes drawing more cards than your opponent. There's all kinds of ways to look at card advantage. But if you look at it from a resource advantage, the deck does very, very well in that regard, especially through separation advantage against burn. Right, because every time you're doing 3 and gaining 3, that's 2 cards they need. Right? Sideboard. Cast down. Probably some problem creatures here or there that they want to. I would use it. When I played the deck, it seems to struggle against combo decks like Cycle Storm, things like that. If I just need to kill a creature on spot for whatever reason, obviously Cast Down's a choice. Guess Verdict for UB Terra decks, Crypt Rats, Suffocating Fumes for the Go Wide decks, Nile Spellbomb. Right now it's great against the Exhume stuff that's going on, even though it's not really hit the tournament scene that well. I would probably... Here's one thing that I've noticed about this particular deck that is a problem. It's Weather the Storm decks, right? Weather the Storm is extremely difficult for this deck to overcome because again, it's that virtual card advantage. You think you're winning and now you need another 5-6 cards to win the game because sometimes Weather the Storm is kicked pretty heavily. If I was building the sideboard, I'd probably go this route with 4 Duress in the side. Keep the Crypt Rats, cut the Fumes, add Fairy Macabre. I would probably go that route, definitely for duress, specifically targeting Weather the Storm, which really isn't in, it's not in Burn. It's not in Affinity. But if I should come across it, I just don't want to auto loss with a heavy kicked Weather the Storm. So again, pretty simple. It's a simple deck, but it's a great meta call. Like I'm not going to sit there and say that, wow, it doesn't require so many in-game actions. No, there are in-game actions. You just don't have to overcomplicate it. If you're looking to win the game, you just do it in the most efficient way possible. And against the current meta, even against Ponza, you don't really, you might lose a land, but it doesn't matter. You can operate on two. Right? Let's get into some games. Match 1, game 1. I do know the opponent. Asked that he play red. Money's a great opponent. Good friend. Glad he went ahead and stepped up in here. So we're going to play against red. Opening hand. It's not bad, right? We look for optimal 2 lands. It's unfortunate we have a Karoo land, but especially against knowing red. But you're playing it as if you don't know you're playing against red. You just still want to make your optimal plays. Burn spells, blocker, card draw, 2 lands. It's an auto keep. It's a great blocker to have him play. We're just passing the turn. We're not trying to get in the damage. We figure at this point on turn 2, right? If he bolts it, fine, whatever. They still lose 2. We gain 2. Watch life total. And we talked about that virtual card advantage, right? They spent a number of cards, and it's 1 point of damage. I'd have to rewatch this match, actually, and count the number of cards to get into that position to win the game versus the amount of cards we don't have to spend. I would think it'd be quite in our advantage. Cauldron Familiar on the sack. Draw cards. Prevent damage. It's excellent. And at this point, right, we're just doing math. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So in hand, we have 50% of the opponent's life total. This is a math game. That's what burn is. 50% of the opponent's life total. And then you translate math to turns. So we know red doesn't gain life main deck, so we don't have to worry about that. They don't run inside either, so that's good. So we have 4 mana. We have 1, 2, 3. So what's a turn and a half to do 50%? And we're still at 20. Turn 4, we haven't lost any life against red. We will. But the point is the amount of cards necessary for them to do what they need to do. And that's why I think it's a great meta call. Bringing Cauldron back. What do we got? Monastery Swift Spear at 4 damage. Bring Cauldron back. They lose more life. Just 1, but it doesn't matter. Block, sack. Still at 20. Card advantage us. You can play. This is obvious for those that have played in the game for a while, but sometimes you forget mid-game. Alms of the Vein, even though it's sorcery speed, can be played at instant speed on the opponent's turn. I'm sure everyone knows about that, but not everyone that watches has a ton of experience on it. So just know that Alms of the Vein, if you pay it for its converted mana cost, its CMC cost, its sorcery speed, if you play it for its madness cost, it's at instant speed. We're at 20 life. Opponent has 1 card in hand. Swift Spear is at 5. Life is a resource. This is game, right? We'll take a lot of damage here, but it's just math and turns. That's all that it is. Tyrant's Choice for 4. Discarding Alms. Finish it off. Let's go on to game 2. Match 1, game 2. Opening hand. I'll take it. We've got Okaiba. I'm just going to call it Raid. We got Raid, Serrated Scorpion, 2 burn spells, 2 lands, some defensive play. I brought in Suffocating Fumes for in the event they go wide, we can just kind of buy ourselves some turns. So it's a great keep. Let's go. The opponent did not mulligan. Not sure what's going on with the replay. We don't have a Swiss Spear on 1, which is good. That's just a turn-based thing, right? Buys us more time. Four cards in the opponent hand. There's no rush. We don't have to run Serrated Scorpion right now. I would rather just have card selection off of Limbus. So now we do the math, right? We have 8, 11, 15, 11 in another 2. So that's 13. Over 2.5 turns. And then we're again creating that virtual card advantage through separation advantage. And at this point, it just should be over. It's not the greatest game 2 start for the opponent, but we'll see what he's holding here in a minute. So he's got Galblast, Improvised Club. And it's over. It's a great choice against red, right? Like, this is not an uncommon outcome for this particular matchup. Let's go on to the next match versus Affinity. Match 2, game 1. Excuse me. Opening hand. We're going to keep this, I believe. I'd rather have 2, but we're on the draw. Multiple 1-drops. And then we can see if we get there. We should. Leading with Raid. 1 mana, 2 damage. If nothing else happens. I don't know why the counter on Gingerbrute. I'm sure the opponent had a plan. Super nice guy, too. Seymour was really fun to play against. That helps, right? Whenever you're playing, when they're friendly. I'd have to ask him on this counter spell on Gingerbrute why he felt that was important. It's not the typical start. Now, there you go. It's turn 4, Gear Seeker. But I would expect, or at least my thought process was, that enforcers are on the way. Which is fine, because we'll block. And that just requires them, it requires extra turns from them, or another enforcer on that clock. I mean, we don't have a lot going on right now. That second land is good, but the creature, as far as a burn deck goes, if the creatures get in for just a little bit of damage, that's great. We want to be dodging Reckoner's Bargain. That's with any burn deck, like what's just occurred, right? It's kind of like we're starting over, so to speak. Creatures aren't that important in the dark burn deck. And if you want to blow up Serrated Scorpion, we'll get 2 in. And that's all it really essentially tries to do. create the separation, have enough burn spells to finish it off. And the Lightning Helix effect, it is not Lightning Helix. Please don't misunderstand me or misquote me. Lightning Helix is a better card. But it's a Lightning Helix effect. And it buys you turns, or it requires more cards from them to get the job done if they want to stay on the same clock. He's only got, I was thinking when you ran Counterspell, I don't think they run Counterspell and Rebuke. So rather than using the Madness cost on their turn, I'd rather do it now with 1 blue mana open. Now we got to hope that we dodge another Reckoner's Bargain. Which we do. With only 1 black mana open. Just really, you would think we're under threat, but not really. The deck, again, great meta call. The win on turn 8. Let's go to game 2. Match 2, game 2. It's a great opener. We've got Reckoner's Raid. Well, not great. Actually, I don't want 2 card draw spells in the opening hand. We have 2 burn, a Reckoner's Raid, 2 lands. Your opening hand's not going to always be optimal. You just want as many components as possible of the optimal opener in it. This is good enough. Let's run it. He did maul to 5, so. But the thing about Affinity, they can recover so quickly, depending on what they have. They can maul to 5 and be back to a full grip of cards in no time. We're just going to get Tyrant's Choice in now so it doesn't get countered. It does the most damage. We don't have enough burn in hand to finish this off, but hopefully we can get there. Double Enforcer for the opponent, 1 card in the opponent's hand. He's bluffing with the 2 blue up. Worst card that we could face from the opponent right now is Reckoner's Bargain. It just, especially with no burn spells in hand. Wasn't sure what the deal was with the attack. I kind of felt that maybe they did have Reckoner's Bargain in hand, which they can play off the treasure token. Serrated Scorpion gets in for 2. So all we have to do at this point is get a Tyrant's Choice to finish it off, as long as they don't have Reckoner's Bargain, which we get. So we block, get 2 damage in, Tyrant's Choice if not countered, and no Reckoner's Bargain is the win. We don't have to worry about Reckoners now. I'm just drawing more cards in case Tyrant's Choice gets countered. It doesn't. We've got the win. Again, I know I've said it a number of times. I don't think it's a bad meta call. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Just play what gets you there. The red version, playing against red, seems very easy. Affinity, a little harder because they got Reckoner's Bargain and some way to nullify your cards, but I think it's an excellent meta call right now. Maybe not for long. Thanks for being here. Stay safe and be well.